Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of our hybrid Heritage Wilmot meetings. Welcome also to those tuning in or viewing online, either live or afterwards. I'd like to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. We've gathered virtually in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between the Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community. Next item is disclose your pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have any pecuniary interest to disclose? Seeing none. Next, we'll move on to item 4, which is a review of the minutes from our last meeting. Any comments, questions, omissions, additions? Could I have a motion to approve the minutes then? Al, second. Marg? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So moving on to business. First item we have is the water lot redevelopment update and a presentation by the applicant. So following the last meeting, the applicant has been in touch with township staff regarding revised development concept. And they're here this evening to present where things are at with the proposal and the current state of the design. So I'll turn things over to the architect, David Thompson, to present, and the applicant's here as well. So welcome and thank you for being here this evening.
Hi there. Can we have the first slide by any chance? I understood that.
Yeah, I have them. Which image were you?
Anything's fine. I'll just go through the slides, and can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
It sounds good, yeah.
So I could start, I guess, with a little bit of a preamble as this comes in. So this is the first 3D image. You'll see on the right is the 1850s building, the original building. It is to remain. The two additions on the back, there's a single-story 1970s addition on the back, and there's an 1870s addition as well, which will be removed from the site. That's the intent. And the idea is to restore the 1850s building, as you see on the right, to its form that it was when it was built. So I believe the general contractor is going to speak a little more detail what he's going to do there, but the idea is to strip off the finish on the outside to show the brick, and then of course to restore things like the windows, the soffits, the fascia, and so on and so forth. So the new addition, there is to be a commercial kitchen on the ground floor, and then on the second floor in total will be 4 residential units. One is existing in the old 1850s building, and so there will be 3 new units. That's what the design is showing. And now this facade, what we've tried to do is to work with the existing form, which is basically a U-shaped building. It's fully brick on the outside, the punched openings for the windows, and so on and so forth. So the part of this, we sort of broke it down into forms. So the right-hand side here on the ground floor is retail, food retail. On the second floor is a residential unit. And like the old 1850s building, the thought is that it is one material from grade up to the soffit. The 1850s building is a little bit different in that it's a story and a half. This is a full 2-story building. but we've worked hard to try to bring the roof down to keep the scale down. The slope of the roof is to match the old 1850s building. The finish on the roof is also to match as well. And then the idea is just to, like punch the openings through the material for the doors and the windows, just like with the 1850s building. What we're going to propose is that the building on the right is all stone from the main floor up to the soffit, all the way around. And then the building on the left, we're looking at stucco. And then the gap in between, that's the entrance to the residential lobby. And it is fully glazed. It's meant to be a lantern on the street at night. And it is to, it's so that visitors can recognize where the front door is to the residential lobby. To the left of that at ground is two carriage-style garage doors. And then there is an open, like the carport, and the surface parking to the left of that. And yeah, maybe we can look at the next slide. So this is from the northwest. There is the 1850s building on the left. There is, in a sense, kind of a third building going on here. It's also stucco as well, too. It has an event space on the main floor and a residential unit on the second floor. And again, the slopes of the roofs are to match the existing. And then maybe we'll move on to the next slide. It's a little tricky from the water side. We're dealing here with the GRCA. Grade will come up to match a little smoother than it's shown right there. But you can see on the left-hand side at the ground floor, the event space, the commercial kitchen is basically the rest of the ground floor. There is a loading bay off to the right, you can see. And on the second floor, two residential units with a roof deck at the third level, if you will. There is an elevator that also comes up through the building, and so you can see that form as well. Next slide. And that's a similar view, but a little more to grade, or from grade. Next slide.
So those are all renderings?
Yes. Yeah, sure, we could go through the site plan so people can understand what we're doing to the site here. I don't know if you can zoom in at all, can you? If not, don't worry about it. North is to the left. The 1850s building you can see. No, that's fine. That's good. The 1850s building is, you can see it, existing 1.5-story brick building. And the new addition is at the back. We've had to deal with a GRCA line. You can see the dash line that kind of squiggles along the bottom of the page. And then there's also another GRCA line that is up at the top as well. We'll have to provide parking for a number of cars. The final number is still to be resolved, but I'm showing 3 surface parking areas at the top left corner of the site, which you'd enter off Wilmot Street. Can we have the next slide? This is a demolition plan, which basically shows how we're going to remove the 1870s and the 1970s addition in dashed lines. We go to the next slide and we'll see the elevations, and you can kind of see the dashed lines there, what we're going to demolish. And if we go to the next slide, it'll show the main floor, I believe. So you'll see the extent. So the commercial kitchen is fairly large. That's the commercial kitchen with the retail space out onto Wilmot there. And we've got 3 sets of double doors. If you remember the elevation, that's what the double doors look like. So those double doors actually line up with the double doors that are upstairs on the 2nd floor. You can also see just to the right there, there's a set of stairs coming up. So the residential lobby is there with an elevator that comes up, 2 parking spaces, and a storage area inside a garage and a carport. There's an elevator machine room there. And then the 1850s building is basically staying as is. The intent is that the 2 front rooms, we'll call it, will be more like an event space, and the rear, one will go to staff and one will go to an office. We're also going to provide washrooms. You can see them there. There's going to be 4 washrooms for the event space, with the thought that if the lawn gets used in some kind of a manner, that's where the users can go use the washroom. And we'll go to the next slide, and it'll show the residential component. So grandfathered into the 1850s building is a residential unit. We're showing it as a 1-bedroom unit. It's fairly generous. It has an ensuite and a kitchen and a living area. And then at the back and behind, there's 3 distinct units. There's one there just underneath the hand. And then there's one over there to the right underneath that hand. And then there's a 3rd one out onto Wilmot. There's an amenity space at the top right there, which can be shared with all the residents and, with the town as well, too. It's going to have the theater seating to see a screen and, a refreshment area as well. And I think that might be the extent of it. Oh, there's a bit of a roof plan here. So there's a 3rd floor here, which is just very small. It's for the 1 unit to come up, and there's a roof deck off to the right that will look over the pond. And I think that's, and of course the elevations. So the renderings might show them a little bit better, but what we tried to do here was just show some of the materials, and of course we use the elevations in order to generate the 3D model. So that's the north elevation there, showing the existing building on the right and the new building on the left. And then finally, the west elevation and the south elevation. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And did you mention that the contractor was going to speak as well? Okay, great.
Bob's there.
So, as we know, the existing building in the front there's 3 faces, the north, east, and west, and the cupola are designated heritage and of historical significance. So we last year did a designated substance audit, and as suspected, that identified some minor asbestos in the window caulking on the exterior and some in the interior, but also that the exterior paint had lead-containing. It was lead-containing, not lead-based, but it's still, we did a T-clip test which deemed it hazardous, meaning that paint has to be, there's loose and flaking paint. And so the intent is to do some test patches on it. And if these patches prove that we can clean the brick back to its original state, that would be the preferred preference. I don't know how many people have been in the back of the restaurant. In the lower, there was a back room, and the paint was cleaned off of that. And it's not yellow brick like a lot of buildings in New Hamburg. It is a mix of red and yellow. It's a mixture. It looks good, but experience has shown when the people paint brick, it's usually to hide something. So until the patch is done, or the test patch is done, we won't exactly know what that brick will be like. So if it turns out to be good, the intent is there's patching that has to happen, repair, repointing, And we're going to, because that back building is coming down, we're going to salvage that brick. It was built later, but it's almost a perfect match. And to get new brick today is impossible unless you can find a building that was similar. So we can salvage brick from the old building at the back and do repairs to the existing building, and that would be the preference. If it turns out that that is not the case, it'd go back to a painted building like it's been for, nobody can really tell how many years it's been painted. So the rest of the brick would be repointed, and the same with the stone. It's relatively good shape, that building, except for some water damages at the front entrance there, where water's washed down over the years. And that's, I think, where the patching's happened the most over the century. And then the lead paint would be removed from the wood, scraped back, just the loose, not stripped. And then any wood that is rotted or needs repair would be repaired, and then all the lead trims would be repainted. The next order would be the windows would be replaced. Now, if acceptable to everybody in this committee, and the intent would be to replace them with to look exactly the same as they were, but a aluminum clad wood in a thermal pane, for one, better energy efficiency for the owner, and two, there should be no upkeep, as nowadays wood paint, you need to maintain them at least every 5 years to make sure they last. So that pretty much covers the part of the designated building itself. Oh, the front porch, the foundation under it is totally gone. So we'd shore that roof up, replace the foundation, and put it back to what near as we can figure from photos of what it was. There's very few photos that actually show what it looked like at the base. But and then we could clad the top. It has to be re-roofed with copper or metal, depending on the budget, partially. But there's a couple little roofs on the side that could be, there's a good chance that it was covered in copper at one time. It's hard to say. So the painting, again, I know there's some concerns over colors, and those colors would be run by this committee as well, just to ensure that everybody's happy with them. And they would have to blend in with the architect's design on the back. So I think that pretty much covers what the intent is on the designated part of the building. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think I'll just open it to any questions or comments from the committee, and we may have you guys come back up too. We'll see. Mark, I see your hand up there.
Yes, thank you. The original windows, were they 6/6? 6 in the top sash, 6 in the bottom? Which is common for that age of building? I don't know what they are now.
Lynn is looking over some photos, but we would replace, nowadays we can make them match exactly what's there.
Yeah, but what's there now, is that the original? I don't know what's there, I can't remember.
They're not even, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're not like the old 6/6. They're 6 panes high, and they're like a long sash. So they open like this as opposed to going like that. So they would be 12 panes.
They weren't double hung then, were they? Are they casements, or are they double hung?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I got to take a lot closer look on that one.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, they're going to be replicated exactly in looks.
Okay.
Same with the mullion. They can do the sizing and.
Anyone else? Al?
Yeah, a couple of things. The front door that's on there is not anywhere near the original door. I'm hoping there's a plan to use some, I know there are pictures showing the front porch with, and hopefully we can improve on the door. That was the one knock against the building after Gord and Elkier and Don, whatever his last name is, bought the places. They put a totally inappropriate door on a very historic building.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that that is just an old commercial aluminum door, and we try to find, by looking at the pictures, and match that as close as possible to.
Okay, that's good to know. The second thing is when you remove the paint, will you be doing you'll be doing paint sampling to see what colors may have been on there?
Yes, so the paint will, like I said, we'll do test patches, and there's sandblasting is never an option in restoring brick. It removes its, so that will not be on the table. What it is, there's numerous products on the market. Many of you are familiar with the Imperial. We used a product there called Peel Away, and it's basically a liquid product that is put on the brick, and then you put a paper membrane over it. It sits for several hours, and then you just peel it off, and the paint sticks to that. And they may take a couple applications, and then of course that's thrown in barrels and disposed of at a designated site. But so they'll do it because there's different products that affect. I've looked at the paint, and I think there is only one color.
Even on the windows?
Oh, on the windows, no.
Yeah, because
I was referring to the.
No, I was referring to the windows. Maybe I didn't make myself clear.
So,
So that we could.
The colors would be run by this committee.
Yeah,
beforehand. Just we can do a test on that to see what type of colors are underneath. But I know the brick looks like it's always been that buff, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, because it would be nice to actually match any colors that we could, or that you could find for the windows. I mean, the Heritage Conservation District does have color suggestions, but I mean, if in this case you might be able to find what was there, and then you could replicate it. The other thing, this is just a bit of nitpicking. I believe you were referring to the 1850s building. I think the building was built in 1846. Yeah, and I think it's the oldest residential building left in the Hamburg. Some of the commercial buildings predate that. I was born and raised in the Hamburg, so I remember that building very, very well. I don't know how long, when it was first painted, or if it's always been painted, but I know it was painted when the Waterloud owners took over from Dr. Kirkpatrick. And it just is an interesting story, because I love to tell interesting stories. The fire department actually showed up and painted the building sort of as a welcoming of the new owners. And while they were painting the building, they were all there, a fire call came in. And they were right there, and it was the quickest response on record to a fire call in New Hamburg, because the firefighters were all like a half a block away from the fire hall. But so yeah, that's when it was painted yellow. So what it was like, I don't remember before that. But the color that's there now went on then. I think that's, I guess, just one comment that I know was expressed earlier, and I'm seeing that's been addressed, was the traditional view of the building, of course, has always been from Huron Street, because it does have a Huron Street address, although no one really knows that, because a previous administration allowed the Royal Bank to be drop bombed into the front yard, which destroyed a beautiful landscape. You might be able to restore part of that, because there's great photographs of it at the front entrance. Now where was I going to go with this? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, sorry. The traditional view has been from Huron Street, and of course it's blocked by the bank. So the view that people are most are familiar with now is from Kirkpatrick Park. And that was a concern earlier that that view was going to be, it was going to be very institutionalized. And I'm hoping that, from the drawings, it's hard to tell, but it looks as though that concern has been addressed, and that was a major, major concern with the previous proposal, because that's where most people see it now from, which is unfortunate because it is meant to be viewed from Huron Street. And just to refresh me, what material are you looking to use on that back portion facing Kirkpatrick Park? Is that going to be stucco?
Yeah, at this point in time, that's what we're looking at.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now.
Thanks, Al. Patty, did you have any thoughts? I thought I saw your hand up a while ago.
I feel like I'm 2 steps behind here. So the 1870 part is not designated. Is that correct?
It is not.
Yeah, it just applies to the three.
To the original,
the three
okay, I
original ones.
understand. I just wanted to hear that for sure. Anyway, I really like this design a whole lot better than what we saw before. You mentioned the copper roof at the front. Al would be more knowledgeable about this than me on the porch section and maybe above the windows, I'm not sure. So that's sort of I guess you could do something that looked like that, or you were saying it would be maybe a budget issue?
There's no issue except for cost.
Okay.
Copper's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Copper only looks shiny for a few years, and then the environment takes on the color. Around here it turns brown.
Okay.
It turns a chocolatey brown. So you can nowadays, the steel colors, you can make it look like, it's hard to say whatever that was originally.
No, that sounds fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it possible to put up that, is this just, I was looking at the roof lines, and when Mr. Thompson was up, the second view that he showed, would it be difficult to see that again, or are they, I'll look at it another time. We saw it then, and we saw it in the second last.
Okay, let me just look here.
Last view as well.
One from the north, from RBC.
Yep. There we go.
That's the first one, I think, is it, or did I miss one? And if that's the second, then it's the third. I was just looking at these.
I think that was the first one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then the second one I put up was
Yeah.
this one.
What's the two? Yes, okay. Can we see the third? Sorry.
Is it this one, or, oh, it was this one, sorry.
It was from the.
There.
That's it.
It was this one. And you were talking about the roof, the slant of the slope of the roof matching, which I don't know what I'm looking at here. Between the 1850 building and the third
Yeah.
section.
Good for you for actually seeing that. That's actually not drawn right.
Okay.
So, Andrew, can you put the arrow up on that little slope part that she's talking about? If you go, yeah, right there. Yeah, just see that sort of shallower slope. That's actually wrong. I looked at that. In the model,
Okay.
that slope is just to continue right through to the gable roof, in which case then the two roofs would be the same. That's actually it actually returns like it does right now, but we're
Yes.
not going to leave that like that. We're just going to continue that roof back. In fact, the model, when I look at it, it's not quite 100% accurate. That I don't think the roof slopes are identical. They're darn close to show
Sure,
the
they look
idea.
fine.
But
Yeah,
on the new part, they're just ever so slightly steeper, like, a fraction of a degree, not much at all. So that's a little bit misleading. But where they join together, that is shown incorrectly.
Andrew, can you go one more, please? I think it's the north. If you look at it from the north, it looks, no?
Yeah.
Oh, I think there's one
No,
missing.
right straight on.
The one that's straight on from the RBC.
Oh,
From the north, yeah.
Yeah,
So the first one?
it shows it the best.
This one?
No, the one that's
No, there's
straight
a later
on,
one.
straight on the front door.
I don't recall. Oh, on the elevations. If you go to the drawings. We actually have this model in SketchUp, in which case I'd be able to walk you through it if you wanted to see it at some other time. We
Sure.
just didn't have the means to do that here.
Yeah.
So that's
No, I'm satisfied that you're on it there. That looks,
that's
yeah,
the
that was-
existing.
yeah.
So we'll match that pitch. I'm sorry, I can't tell you what it is right now.
no, that's
Can you
fine.
read it that,
It's just,
Six.
it just, that one
It's maybe
third,
like
I
a
guess,
6 and
was,
12
yeah, it
roof
was
or
was
something
quite
like
quite a
that.
bit off, and
So we'll match that.
that one's helpful. Yep, that one's really
So,
helpful.
in the CAD drawings, it shows it just off to the right there, Andrew, if you want to take your hand up and just bring it, they're right in there, that's the area right there. So
Yeah.
what we were looking at in 3D wasn't quite my intent, but pretty darn close.
Sure,
I didn't think
understand.
anyone was going to pick up on that, actually.
We're testing you tonight.
Anyway, that's good. Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Margaret, I see your hand up there too.
Hi, yes, if you could show the diagram of the facade from the Wilmot Street, I believe it is, that would be
This one?
the east side, right?
East side. Mhm.
You were saying that you were going to do that in stone?
Yes, the building right by Andrew's hand there, that, I'm looking at that in stone, and then the
Why
one-
would you do stone when the original house is brick?
Yeah, what's the foundation? Is the foundation exposed?
Fieldstone.
Fieldstone foundation. So the foundation is a fieldstone. So
Yeah, well, that's-
part of my troubles with when you're working with an older building is that you'll never match the brick. You'll never match the brick. Even here, like with this building, they sort of recalled, I guess, with a yellow brick, but it's not the same brick, it's a different brick.
So what type of stone are you talking about? Like a facade stone, granite field stone, panels of stone? Can you be more specific as to what it's going to look like in stone?
Not at this point in time, I don't have that information. It was a starting point.
Okay,
Now,
thank
it
you.
could be brick. I considered brick. I don't know what everybody else around the table thinks. I just find it quite difficult at times when you're bringing in a new brick and you're working with another brick that is so old that you want them to complement. I want the brick on the old building, the 1850s building, to stand on its own, and I want it to stand out, and I want to respect that brick. So whether, we pick another brick that's similar in color but has a different shape, and the mortar joints are different and all that kind of thing, whether that's the right solution or not, I'm not sure. So a thought was just to pick another material that would be in keeping with the time, and that's where I was thinking of stone. Now, there was some talk about having stone coming up 3, 4, 5, 6 feet or whatever, or the first floor is stone, and then we switch to something else. But again, taking the clue from how the designers and the builders would have thought back in the 1850s, they just basically ran it from grade up to soffit, all one material, pretty much. I mean, yes, there's a stone, lower 2.5, 3 feet, but they didn't, bring it up to 4 feet above the floor and then switch to brick. They just made it all brick all the way up. So I was trying to respect that and just make these forms let the forms kind of speak for themselves, if you will. What stood out in my mind with the 1850s building was just, the level of the woodworking for the windows, for the soffits, for the fascias, what do we call it? The cupola. It's just outstanding. And I didn't even want to go there, unfortunately. It would be nice, but then again, the problem is that you start competing with that, and so it might be best just to leave that on its own, stand on its own, and then, like with this building here, they did not try to, replicate the old building at the front. They just wanted to complement it.
Excellent. Marg, is that your hand up there too?
No,
Oh, okay. Alvin.
Yeah, you're mentioning, just sort of on that point, I hear where Mark is coming from. The Imperial, that edition was brick, and it seems to, it works quite well. It's a different brick, so the form is similar, so I'm not paying the bills, but I think brick would be probably better to the eye than going to something, because it's the same material, but yet it's different. You want it to be compatible, but you also want to show that it's a new building, but that it blends in with the other. So I wouldn't just dismiss brick outright.
I don't have a problem with brick.
Yeah.
It could work.
Yeah.
The right brick.
Yeah. Exactly. The other, you mentioned the cupola. I'll have to tell you, I was in that cupola.
In it?
Yeah, we were up there. In another life, I worked in construction for my brother, Bruce, Younger Construction, and they converted the 2 upstairs room to the bed and breakfast, and we did a little bit of that work. And while we were there, we opened it up and went up there. And it's not like here. It's not like a Belvedere, like the castle where you go up and walk around. But it was interesting going up there. We found a lot of cigarette butts, and we figured that Dr. Kirkpatrick's kids must have gone up there to sneak a few smokes over the years. I've been up there, and I also have to bear responsibility for the addition where Adam Brenner is, because we built that for the water lot. My brother's firm, and I worked on that, and that was originally was to be the water lot had a store out of there, and they also served food out of the back. So that, you're right, that was done in the 1970s. But so I just wanted to sort of to latch on to Mark's point about the brickwork. So, as I said, I remember that building really, really well, and just the river used to come right to the back of the house.
Wow.
I don't know, because that back area, the back corner, there was enough room to walk through there, and then the river was there.
Right.
So we used to sneak through there all the time, and Mrs. Kirkpatrick would stop us. We took that as a shortcut on our way to Grandview, and Mrs. Kirkpatrick was not happy with that. So it's changed quite a bit. There was a lot of fill done in there, because the side where the event, I guess where you're planning to have the outdoor event, that was the mill race. So the water wrapped right around the building.
The fill is interesting then, because right now the 1970s floor is level or below the level of the sidewalk. So we want to change that too. We want to pull that up about 16, 18 inches, which then would reduce the number of stairs from the 1850s building into the back. It's only 3 steps, so we can have a ramp. If we look at the floor plan, you'll see there's a ramp, so that the whole back space now will be, wide open to anybody getting in there with a wheelchair or, a walker, fully barrier-free, which it's not right now, because you end up going down 5 stairs to the 1970s addition part of the back.
And that back part, that's where the Kirkpatricks lived. There was a carport there. That was torn down when the kitchen was put on.
Right.
And the Kirkpatricks lived there because that's where I used to deliver their Globe and Mail.
Question there.
Thanks, Al. Mark?
well, I think Patty had her hand up. Let Patty go first,
All right,
and then
Patty.
I'll do it.
Okay, mine is a small point, but I when Mr. Thompson was, this is the brick stone thing, and so that, I just wanted to say that either one certainly has merit. I liked his comment that it does respect the original building and leaving it the brick part and then doing something different on the other part. I mean, that's a strong argument to me. But brick would, you know, but then Al's point that it worked on the Imperial is also something to follow. Anyway, you'll figure it out.
Okay, so we're favoring the brick, did you say?
I favor your idea of keeping the brick just on. I mean, my first impression is, yes, it's nice to just have the brick on the old part and doing something different on the other parts.
Okay.
I can see the strength of that, but
Right.
they're both, you know, there are lots of bricks, so different types of brick, I mean.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mark?
Well, I'm very much in favor of using brick and not stone. The Imperial did a beautiful job, the yellow brick at the original building, and then if you look down the side street, it's brick, but it's red. It just clashes in my eyes. I would try to choose a buff brick of some kind. You're never going to get a match, you're right, but I would not go stone, and I would definitely look for some brick that's somewhat comparable in color, but not jarring like red. That's my only comment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. For my perspective, I appreciate the design idea and the direction you guys are going for the design. I think it'll work really well. And the commercial space along Wilmot Street, I think, will be a great addition to have a more formal space. So that'll bring a lot of activity to that street, which is nice. And like what Al said about the section facing the river, breaking it up so it's not such a kind of big monolithic wall, I think that'll really help to bring attention to it also, but also a better mix with everything. So I appreciate you guys coming tonight to share where things are at. I was going to ask, what's expected timing to have, I'll say, the design finalized for like a formal submission to the township? And then also related to that, what are you thinking for timing to do the work on the original building? If you had any details on that, that'd be great.
I guess it depends if you're talking to the contractor or the client.
That's exactly what I was going to say. She wants to start tomorrow.
There's no snow, you're good.
I think Bob's hoping for snow.
I think the idea is spring. Yeah.
Yeah. Permit drawings, you know, we might be about, we need our structural engineers and mechanical, electrical engineers. We need to bring in civil engineers. There's a landscape architect involved as well, too. They're all, you know, with us. They're just kind of waiting for the go-ahead. So this meeting was a little bit of a milestone for us. So if we're the middle of January, you know, submit for permit in the next 2 to 3 months, you know, seems realistic. You know, some work we might be able to do prior to getting a permit if it looks like we're going to get a permit. You know, nothing major, but there are certain things you can do. So the idea is this spring, summer, for sure, get going on it and just move as quickly as we can.
Excellent. And would you start with the work on the existing building, or you want to get going on the addition, or everything at once?
I think they're actually two separate elements in some regards, but, you know, I'll let Bob speak to that.
I would say you want to get at least the brickwork done this summer.
Okay.
On the and like hit that as early as we can, so get it buttoned up before fall hits. Mm-hmm. Just the 3 sides and that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not affected by the addition.
That's right. So do you think that you'd be looking at, you mentioned the test patches, would that be kind of an early spring, looking for the test patches to get the
Yes,
method?
that's what I'd like to do.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been talking to a couple, there's not a lot of people out there, and I'd be open to this committee if they have any suggestions. I've got a couple that actually, like, A lot of people just go at it with a sandblasting, which is not, well, one, you can't do that with lead, even though it's done everywhere, but not on our jobs. So, and it's pretty hard in the brick. So, you got to get somebody that knows what they're doing,
Right.
on the removals. So,
Okay. Al?
Just, I really like, Bob, your concern about brick. Because a lot of people miss that. The building where Riverside Flowers is, the Zaire Insurance Building, that was sandblasted back in the 60s. And if you walk by and take a look at it, you can tell. And I'm surprised that it is held up as well as it has, because the original glazing is gone, has been gone. And I don't know what kind of problems John may or may not have in the future, but that was sandblasted, and what was sandblasted, it was like this deep on the ground.
yeah. I think a lot of people have sandblasted buildings not knowing that, one, it's lead, and what it actually does to the longevity of the brick itself. So, buildings in relatively, that was a well-built building. This one is.
I know I've seen soda blasting being used, but I don't know if that's
No,
more
that's an
feasible.
option too, but you still have to, that becomes, because it's lead, you have to contain it, meaning you have to build a containment
Right.
box around yourself. So you want to get as much of that off as you possibly can, and that's where this the chemical peel comes in. And there's, like I said, numerous products out there, and one's actually called, believe it or not, elephant snot. So that's what it's called. And they try them, and then they find out which works the best on the product. And
Okay. Well, certainly keep us posted, and once you've, I guess, kind of finalized plans, then let us know. We could give some preliminary correspondence back as like draft feedback from the committee. I think we could put that together. And then once there's a formal submission to the township, then we'll get circulated by planning and for the formal comments on the addition part. But we could treat it separately too, so we can deal with the work on the main house and then the addition as well. So then we can get things sorted out in a timely manner. Any final thoughts, anyone? All right. Well, thanks again for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just had one quick question.
Sure. Then we can hear you better.
Just, I believe we needed your support in the plans and everything before, because it's deemed heritage or of historical value by the region as well, I believe. So what kind of direction or what would be next?
Yeah. So it's designated as a heritage property. So
Yeah.
then before you do the work on the building, then you require support from the committee. And then the only part for the region would be if you were considering applying for funding from the region.
Okay.
And I know they had paused funding for a while to do
Yeah.
a review of the program. So I think probably between Sherry and myself and planning, we can try and find out where that's at
Okay.
to try and give you guys some direction, because that's certainly a consideration too. And it has to be a project not yet in progress to be able to apply for the funding. So if you're interested in that, we can see what we can find out about timing and where things are at, because, I mean, certainly this is a project that would be worthy of that funding too.
Yes,
So
I appreciate it.
yeah, okay, we can do that. Any final thoughts, anyone? All right, well, thank you again for coming.
Thanks very
And
much.
keep in touch.
You
We
bet.
look forward to seeing the finals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. The next item we had on the agenda was Heritage Day. Just wanted to have a discussion on final details, notice we had a good discussion at our last meeting related to Heritage Day Week, and thanks, Sherry, for putting together the list of things and what we talked about and summarizing it, so that's great. And I understand things are getting underway, organized, so I think I'll just open it up. If anyone has any updates to share or things that we needed to talk about. Sherry?
Great. So yes, this is going to be the first in-person Heritage Day that the committee has hosted since 2020. Because of the size, we were going to host it here, but we've decided to move it to the Wilmot Rec Complex. So that is booked for Wednesday, February 22nd from 6 till 9 p.m. And from 6 to 7, there will be heritage displays. And then from 7 to 8, we have a lecturer. Yvonne is not here this evening, but she has booked Gary Warwick for us and is looking for some additional support for him as well. And then from 8 till 9, it's going to be open to questions and then refreshments and a wrap up with the heritage displays.
Awesome. It's exciting. And I know we talked about reaching out to groups to see who is interested perhaps in displays, and wondered if there was things you guys needed support on for that, or if that's underway.
So that is the next step for the subcommittee of Yvonne, Marg, and Patty. And so we will get the list together and get that out as soon as possible. We've started in-house with our marketing for that. So we've got a social media campaign lined up through Facebook, through the Castle's Facebook page, as well as the townships as well, and then on Heritage Wilmot's website. It's also going to be on the Castle's website too, and that actually has already been posted so that we can put out the save the date for everybody to put that on their calendars to attend. Excellent.
Thanks, Shay. Anyone else? Any comments on that? Al?
I just want to, I shared this with Sherry while we were waiting for the meeting to start. I met with Stuart Grant from the publisher of the Wilmot Tavistock Gazette this afternoon and mentioned to him that we were planning a Heritage Day, and if we get, the information to him, they're willing to help us out, publicize however they can. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but they are putting out a Heritage edition of the paper of the week, I believe February 22nd is when February 16th is when they're putting it out. So it would be a good lead-in for our event, so we can keep them in our mind. Another person, and this may be already on your list, but it just popped into my mind to make a prize of this would be Rich Mills, who writes the column on Saturdays for the Record 3 out of the 4 weeks of the month, because he could probably often at the bottom of his column, and I think it's pretty, Rich's column is pretty widely read, so that might be another way to publicize our event.
Excellent. Thanks, Al. The other thing I thought of too is the debate and outlook, of course. And Al, your comment about the newspaper reminded me that there was the inquiry from the paper that you received, Sherry. So maybe we can do something for both papers. Okay. All right. Anything else Heritage Day related? All right. Well, then we can move on. Last item was the Heritage Register. So last meeting we talked about the changes to the Heritage Act and related to Bill 23 and how that changes our approach to the Heritage Register. I know we need to do a review of the register, decide how to move forward with properties to consider for designation. We're going to have a working group get together before the holidays, but holiday schedules got in the way, so we didn't get a chance to do that. So it's 2023 now, so we can circle back and take a look at properties we want to recommend for priority. So I just put this on here as a reminder and would open it up if anyone has any thoughts they wanted to share on the register. I guess the other consideration is that the regulations for Bill 23 and the Heritage Act changes are now in place, and the regulations, they did make a change in the Heritage Act criteria, so it's only one criteria to be listed, but you need two to be designated, so it's easier to list, but if the goal is to move it to designation, then we should consider that in the properties that we're going to recommend to come forward. Al?
Yeah, based on that, I think I sent it around to everybody. The communication that came out of Ottawa from what's the official term? The National Trust. Is it possible, and maybe the National Trust has done this already, since we talked about trying to maintain our list in another way, since we really can't. Is it possible to have all of our properties that we have listed put on the national register?
Oh.
And were they doing that? Because it did, I believe the article said something about so many thousand properties in Ontario were going to be added to their list. I think our designated properties may be already on the list. I'm not sure, but is that a possibility so that that list does exist somewhere in addition to, just a thought?
I think you're talking about the list of endangered places that they keep every year, and I think they were going to put all the listed properties on that list, if I recall. Yeah. I don't know if it was a register or not, but I could be wrong.
I know they have their list. This is not the list of endangered properties.
Oh,
this
okay.
is. I'm sure that at one point the Heritage at the University of Waterloo may have put forward our list of designated properties a number of years ago, because I think our property is on that, and I don't know how it got there. I don't have a problem with it being there, but obviously it got there somehow, because, our house is not a National Historic Site. It's important to us, but...
Okay, I think you're talking about, they have the list of heritage properties. I don't know if it's through the National Trust or if it's Parks Canada. I know the register you're talking about, though, so maybe that's something we could look at, certainly. Mark?
I was working at the Heritage Resources Center at the time, and we had some students that were almost graduated working on it, and it was a grant from Parks Canada to list the properties that were already designated and do an architectural description, and that was part of the designation and so on, but that, you can still look that up. I've forgotten the title of it, but they were designated buildings. Our list of the non-designated register would not be, I don't think, accepted by
National Trust.
The National Trust for Canada, because that would be only designated buildings and only buildings that are of provincial and federal significance, and ours aren't. So no, the only list that we have at the moment is the non-designated register. And I had suggested earlier at the last meeting that we change the name of the non-designated list or register to a Wilmot building survey. And then you just keep the whole list, nothing's lost. And we can add to it because there are some buildings that Yvonne and I did not include in the latest batch that have not been accepted, and they won't be until we straighten this business out of non-designated buildings. But there are a couple of houses that are very interesting and worthy of inclusion on Peel Street, but it was summertime and the trees prevented a good photo. So we have to go back and do those. But I would like to know if Yvonne and I can do that. She would take the photographs, I write up the architectural description, we would try and get some history and add them on, but as a building survey rather than on the non-designated list at this point?
I think, Mark, that would be great work to have done, and then it's ready, and then we can add it to whatever we call our list as appropriate. But yeah, now is a great time if there's any photos you needed to get. So I would say certainly go ahead with that work.
Okay.
Al?
This is just, I don't know if anybody can answer, if Andrew can answer this question or not. Is there going to be a limit as to the number of properties you can put on your non-designated? I mean, we know there's going to be a limit as to how long they can be on the list. So if we do what Marg suggests and call our list a survey of buildings, and we don't want to put them all on at once and then have them all drop off, because we know we can't designate all those properties in 3 years. Is there a limit, or I guess, as to how many you could put on in a year, thinking, you know, we look at the ones that we think should get on right away. So say, you know, we keep, as we're working through this, and I hate to say I'm thinking this far out, because I'm hoping somebody will come along and put this back to the way it has been, but we know that's not going to happen right now. That we could take these buildings from our survey and say put 10 on at once, or, I mean, I don't know. Do we know that detail at this point?
Well, I don't think there's a limit in numbers. It's just the limit in time frame, right? So it's just, once you do it and they don't proceed to designation, then they have to be removed from the list, right? So, but what you keep outside of a formal registry is independent of that anyway, right? For information purposes, but the formal registry, I mean, yeah, no limit to the number, but you're limited by timeframes.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. Your list can, or your register can be 2 properties or 200 or 2,000. And yeah, it is just the factor of the timing that after 2 years, then they all come off. So there's that consideration, of course. Any other thoughts on the register? Okay. Well, we'll try and set up a meeting. We can go through and prioritize properties anyway. And Marg, I think if you and Yvonne are able to finish up the properties on Peel Street, I think that would be a great addition too. And then those can come into whatever our list ends up being. And then we can go from there.
Okay.
So that was the last item under business. I did not have anything under new business or correspondence. If anyone else has any correspondence they wanted to note, now is a good time. All right. Any other information sharing? Al?
I just wanted to say that I went to the 70th anniversary reunion for junior hockey on Saturday night, and it was, I had a lot of fun. The game that was going on was sort of secondary to to the visiting that was going on. There were a lot of former players there from all eras, and I think the organizers, the Firebirds and their volunteers, did a good job. They had a lot of good displays. The displays that we have there in the showcases, a lot of people were looking at them. And then there was more displays that some of the players must have brought back. So I visited with a few people from the 60s, 62, 63 team who were there. And I'm hoping to put something together for, of course we're on TV, I shouldn't be saying this, on that 62, 63 team, because it's 60 years ago this spring that they won the first of 2 All-Ontario championships in the 60s. There were some, it was a remarkable era in hockey anywhere, but in this community it was pretty, there were some pretty interesting things in the 20s and the 30s, but the group from 63 through to 69, they dominated junior C hockey in Ontario. They were just a powerhouse. It was unbelievable how successful they were. And a lot of those guys are, they're not young anymore, but they're very proud about what they did, and they were willing to share a lot of information, and so it was a good event. And hopefully the current Firebirds can win this year and make it back to back. But no, it was well planned, and I think people that went enjoyed it. The only thing that was missing, and I talked to Ken Seltzer, who just retired from the New Hamburg Band, was the New Hamburg Band wasn't there, because they used to go to all the games, and every time the Hans scored a goal, they played a number every time. So some nights when they were really good, that band spent more time playing than they did watching the game. Anyway,
Thanks, Al. I had just one minor item. We received a whole bunch of postcards for New Hamburg from a heritage planner I know in Kingston, and he sent them to Sherry to have for the township's archive records. So there's lots of great postcards, some that I've never seen before. So Sherry has them. Maybe you could scan them, or just scan the page and send them to us.
I'd be happy to circulate those.
Okay, excellent. That was all I had. Our next meeting, February 8th, and I realized after I sent out the agenda, we talked about having a 7 o'clock start instead of 6:30, so we could do 7 o'clock, if that's good for everyone.
Yep.
Andrew?
So, wearing my other hat, forgetting that we are hosting these in a virtual environment, we've previously had a committee of adjustment meeting that we rescheduled for February 8th, which wasn't previously a problem, but now would be a problem. We haven't technically sent out the notice yet, but we've kind of made some people aware of that time frame.
Okay.
Any opportunity to schedule this for a different date, or potentially time? The meetings are at 7, the committee of adjustment would be at 7. Probably wouldn't last much more than a half an hour. And I think our IT staff said they need an hour between meetings.
Okay.
So I don't know whether we'd do it a different night, or I mean, if that's all that works for this committee, we can reach back out to our committee adjustment members and see if we can reschedule that as well. It was my oversight. I forgot that we had to, the hybrid environment complicates things, right? So
That's okay. I would be okay if it was February 1st or the 15th. Yeah. It'd be good to certainly meet again before Heritage Day, and then if there's any final things we need to do. So I guess open it up. Any preference, the 1st or the 15th?
The 1st is better because then you've got more time before Heritage Day. The 15th is cutting it a little close.
Okay. The other thing we could do is we could go to the Thursday that week if that works. Like instead of the 8th, go the 9th.
Yeah, that works too.
Al?
Yeah, that would be good.
yeah, I would have a conflict on the 15th.
Okay.
I also would have one on the Thursday, but I could probably get out of that one.
Actually, before I commit to something, I should probably check too.
Is this an ongoing change with the Committee of Adjustment?
no, it was just due to scheduling conflicts with that committee, so we shifted it, yeah. But the committee typically meets the first Wednesday every
Okay.
month, yeah.
Yeah, I would be fine that if it was the 1st or the 9th or the 15th or 16th.
Better earlier than later.
Okay. We could also do the 2nd.
Well, the 9th is fine. It's close to the original date.
Okay. Al, you said you had something the 9th that you could get out of possibly?
Yeah, I have choir practice on Thursday nights.
Okay.
I just may have to skip 1 week.
Or I guess the 7th could even work. I guess I'll ask Sherry and Andrew and IT, is there any issue if it was a Tuesday or a Thursday, or is it flexible?
I sent a message upstairs to see how it works with their schedule. I'm just waiting to hear back.
I have a thumbs up over the balcony. Is that for Tuesday or Thursday? Excellent, okay. So why don't we go to the 7th then, and then Al
Yeah.
can go to his choir practice? And the only one that's not here, we'll just check with Yvonne and Ren and see if that's fine for them. But otherwise, we'll go February 7th, and do we want to go at 6:30 or 7 o'clock?
I prefer 7, but
Okay. The 7th at 7 it is.
great, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's it.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Al and Marg are tied. All right, thanks, everybody.